Um, it's Sunday, September 4th, 2022. I just got back from church. I changed out of my church clothes back into my daily wear. I'm in this pattern. Um, I went to this institution or this familial familial gathering with Lewis today. I left both of the Anthonys at home. I tried to get the little one, spoke to the pastor about it or the deacon. Um, so now, before I left the house to go to the service, um, I turned on the morning programming, I suppose. I don't really know what to call it. Um, But this morning there was Dr. Charles Stanley again. I was flipping through the channels. I don't want to get stuck on any one person on the television screen. I've been pretty true to that. But he seems to be of a higher authority and that people listen to him. He's on the television. He got somewhere in life. He seems to be a higher power or a godly man, and it's actually called In Touch. So now I've been in touch with Dr. Charles Stanley on this one-way telephone call of he crossed paths with my remote control, and I gave him the floor and the respect to listen to him for 5 minutes or so. Um, the message was crystal clear. And then, as I proceeded within the same time frame to some of the other stations, I'm just going slightly outside of my comfort zone. Let's not get crazy here with words. I proceeded on the channel changer up only a few stations, and I got to something sounded French-ish. It sounded more Creole, honestly, and it was coming from a place called Haiti on New York television. I then continued along with the remote control up and down button, and I found soon after that the commercials, the advertising space, the commercials, and the broadcast was in full Spanish on a separate station. So now I'm in North America. We only speak English, or that has been before the deluge. Um, or before the appearance of everything that I know, loved, and held sacred as a youth in a very protected class of something um, that I thought would continue my entire life so I could work from a different tier. But here we are, cast to the absolute bottom of the wretched. I'm watching and how could this be? So, like, who do I ask? Do I ask Dr. Charles? I mean, I'm not in touch with him. He's in touch with me. He's on my television, but there's no return reciprocal conversation in does he know that in New York there's enough people that they actually broadcast foreign agenda and policy into the interior of New York with those people inside New York? Now, how does the interior of the United States of America work on keeping those of us that are not of these places, but are actually of here and ancestors to the presidents and the president's grandchildren, great grandchildren, brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth at that congregational level? Just curious with outside kings and queens and things, and there being some form of fleet, and then there being some form of arms and helpful sorts that are in service in a different method and way. Um, how I'm like theoretically and hypothetically in a parenthetical thesis, I'm trying to build for myself a government or a theory of government of what we have. And then how these other pawns and pieces on the interior with access to unregulated, ungovernmentally scripted, transactional. I mean, on this broadcast of Haitian Creole descent, they have a big thing about reparations up there. Now, are they holding their own schools? I mean, my children have gone to the state school. I went to the state school. And I don't know if the separation of church and state, if they have formed some congregation, and I don't know what class or what justification they have, but there's this insidious, like trepidatious, like intrepid. I'm trying to be intrepid, honestly, but my bravery is waning at the moment in free speech. Of I'm really frightened of the kings that are and have been, and I looking of Victorian. Again, I don't want to upset Queen Anne or Queen Elizabeth, but if we're speaking at Tudor level, I'm quite frightened of some of the broadcasts coming in. Again, what was taught and then almost retracted was a certain level of language, but I don't know if it was to my detriment or to positive sustainability of my person, stay alive and survive. I haven't quite figured out how that works in this area. They also had on this morning, incidentally, speaking of merchandise and household words, since Brady has this coach called Aryan, which Hitler had the Aryans and the Vril. I've heard of this. Usually the humans in this New York area, they're like, it's like sacrilege. Like they get really angry about that conversation. So I stay out of it. However, then there's this conversation of the man, like there's the man upstairs, and then there's like the man next door, and I don't live next door to Peyton or his father or any of the other two siblings. And again, not my genre or cup of tea, but I mean, here we are as one larger whatever. I don't know if they're NEG or POS, but I've got whatever I got going on at ABO and some real serious. There's like the New York Giants, and like Brady Bunch has my birthday. So in King Stars, which is very big with the Orient, by the way, in case, or the East, if nobody remembers their correct ancestry from Fleet and Kings, of we don't really have much access. I have a King Star relationship with something very important, and I brought forth another King Star. I know I've met Koreans that know this, and they hold it in high regard, at least when we crossed paths. Um, and so I saw this morning they had this Provost Academy, and almost like the derby of Jets and Giants getting on the same field and kind of almost showing their NFL might. And I'm thinking to myself, some of the previous broadcasts that have mentioned that part of the fight was that the ABO that I'm associated with used to rule the field of several sports. Basketball, Boston made a big commentary about they had one black person on their white team. And now today, in 20th century, year 22, I look up, I don't see any white people. It's like they're totally gone. Not on the sidelines, not in coaching staff, not on their players. Did they essentially kill off all of the beginners? Did they sell this sport in NBA to some unbeknownst I mean, like, these are big power moves. I don't understand how they're going unannounced to the public. Then I'm watching this NFL, and now again, I've seen photos and I've heard the side of the story, and I'm just an extraterrestrial. There's two sides to this story. There's the white side, the black side wanting to become on the teams, and then there's the extraterrestrial side of, well, now let's do some summation in polymathematics and science and look at ratios here for a moment. And now all of a sudden they've built a class while I'm being held at like below floor for management. I mean, they're living better than I am. How is this so? They play a sport. Somebody's funding their sport. It is criminal. It is treasonous. It is seditious. And it is affecting the democracy of the people to be able to have labor and family and job, not being raped, abused, exsanguinated, perhaps in one's sleep, waking up anemic, not knowing how, not having any internal bleeding issues. Nothing aligns or adds up except some criminal act is taking place as I try to lay my head at night. After being forced into a marriage I didn't want to be in. Not once, but twice. For my own safety, which isn't so. It's like this constant contradiction. And then I look at how the humans are behaving, and I'm just like, so here we are. So this is episode 53, which aired. It says In Touch. I don't know who he's in touch with, but he has a following and a voice.
Because number one, there's nothing, listen, there's going to be a rest through our souls. But if you think that means sitting down doing nothing, listen, God is not inactive. Jesus isn't inactive. And the saints of God on this earth not inactive. And why do you think heaven's going to be some inactive place you sit around and do nothing for all eternity? Jesus said, I'm going to prepare a place for you. I'm going to get busy and prepare a place for you. So when I come again, I'll call you to myself.
I've been waiting. We'll call it patiently, for years for that to come to fruition in the correct light, for the correct purpose, and to serve the correct people or person or whatever. Instead, it feels as though I've been cast out, locked out, and locked down with some crazy donkey who is a human, but he's a POS, which is an illegal criminal act upon itself, because that means that it had murderous intent to hurt me by trying to father children with me. And I know there had to have been somebody at Baron level, considering his father is an ex-Baron of sorts, whatever that means. He got thrown out of Baronhood. Great. Then why is he coming after me, and where's my brethren to protect me?
Heaven's going to be a very active place. So I want you to turn, if you will, to Revelation, because somebody says, well, you mean to tell me that after I labor down here all these years, I ought to go to heaven, go to work? Amen. Amen. That's right. And for you folks who decided you're going to retire, listen, you may retire against God's will, but I'm telling you, he's going to wake you up when you die. Listen to this. Listen to what he says. He says, for example, let's begin in verse 1 of that 22nd chapter. Then he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, he says, coming from the throne of God unto the Lamb. In the middle of its street, on either side, he says, the river, there was the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. There will be no longer there any curse, and the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his bondservants will serve him. Wake up.
His bond servants. I find that very interesting, considering it's Revelation 22, which looks like double Z at Cattaruzza. I have two of those in my name. Also, it says 1-3. born of the infinity on the third. Augusta Vater.
His bondservants will serve him. That is, God, listen, is going to give you and me the privilege, the high honor of serving him in heaven for all eternity.
Okay, so that would have been science heaven is NASA. Climate change and protecting oneself would have been like Noah. There's a couple of branches of something called an US, the US. Then there's like this other party called the Federals. I'm a little confused why nobody came to call upon me and ask me to help in service to something higher power than myself. It is foolish to leave me here in this manner, and it's criminal to treat me as I've been treated without outlet to escape to perform the service that I was intended for when my king star and family tree birthed me for king star purpose in connection to constellations and a different purpose than just what is here in some hard laborious trabajo, or I don't even know what the word is en français. Je ne sais pas.
There's not a single verse in the scripture that gives anybody legitimate excuse for not serving God. We can serve him from any perspective. There are so many avenues of service for God. And yet some people will live their entire lives. And I think about people who get saved early in life, they join the church, they get baptized, and they go to church. Somewhere along the way, it never dawns on them. Nobody ever instructs them. Nobody ever challenges them. They go to church. They give their money, their prayers, and so forth. And nobody ever says, listen, are you serving God? What are you doing to serve God? And I think about people who live that. And I think of the tragedy of living your entire life and never even realizing that you're a servant of God, never taking advantage of the opportunity, never recognizing what an awesome honor it is to serve God. Friend, don't live your life, waste your life, and die forgetting the fact that God chose you and saved you. And one of the reasons for doing so is that you may become one of his servants. He can use your hands and your feet and your eyes and your ears and your lips and your body to serve him, to bring honor and glory to him. The idea of joining a church and sitting down and filling up a pew or a seat and going home and forgetting it and not serving God is totally unscriptural.
On that note, I sat in the pew this morning. I brought Lewis with me, a different perspective than last week. I noticed that there was some mention of something along those lines in here. A different generation as opposed to the one that I brought last week. And now I'm back and I'm making mention of some of the other servants of God, those that have a higher voice, power, or denominator than I do in this situation of life, in this area that they use this as the coverage in order to differentiate in a referee of when someone is off sides or out of bounds. This is where they pledged me for some reason. But during this, in the man upstairs, they did not produce the correct fruit. I mean, they did for a while I was in elementary school, and then he disappeared when the time of marriage came and to have children, with no words, with no wisdom, with no memory to carry forward with me of what was to come or what was going on or what was being asked of me or what I needed or how I needed to participate. Just nothing. It's like the whole world went dead. And now it's just like supreme survival mode.
Totally unscriptural. There's not a single verse in the Bible whereby a person can defend that kind of attitude. And tragedy of tragedies is that some people have lived their entire life and it's never dawned on them, I have a personal responsibility to my God, to my Savior, to the Holy Spirit who enables me to serve the living God daily. Whether it's in my home, in my business, in my school, among my friends, I'm to serve the living God. And let me tell you,
And in this area, under that pattern, they have this thing that they've always spoken about, which I also do not know in action and motion how that affects me, but they say there's a separation between church and state. So then why is there so much state in my church when I go? Just curious. There's so much integration. There is no longer an identity. It is some mishmashed, misspoken, mispronounced, misquoted, misled mash up of nothing looks right, nothing feels right, nothing sounds right, nothing worked out. The children are all wrong. I mean, the last two look appropriately correct, but the first two, although the first one has this, Bija has the seed spirit of spirituality, but the fatherhood was all wrong. The way that he came about as an IC in Roman. Today, inside of Zion, I made it to Zion. Zion has a member that went to Norway on a pilgrimage. Good for her. These things are just dreams in some reality that never found traction. I don't know why. But I'm glad that other people have lived a life worth getting up for each day and being able to make that level of pilgrimage to like a place I could only dream at this point. It doesn't even seem realistic. But in here, it does mention other parts that are in like integritus.
and let me tell you something, that's not an option. We say baptism isn't an option. Neither is serving God an option. That's not optional. Well, will I be a servant of God or will I not?
But the problem is in this area, nobody speaks of God. I don't know if it's just not trendy. I don't know if they've broken the world so much that now even finding the pieces that have to be held to some higher standard for law purposes and the enforcement of rules and law. I mean, they don't teach any here, especially not. I have to go to church to get a history lesson today about Potter, the Potter of the family, and then the wife, and then the children, or siblings, or whichever, and then the slaves. So they gave me a Roman, inside Zion, they gave me a Roman Eckstein capstone in order to build an arch for myself while I'm trying to brave this storm by myself at the moment.
And I think about young men who are called to the ministry and turn him down. You think about what that means. Somebody's not thinking. You mean God called you to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? And you said no to the sovereign ruler of the universe who wouldn't even have to blink his eye and could make you absolutely obliterate in a moment?
Actually, I did have somebody come. I had Nicholas who found me in college in Hofstra, asked me to marry him, said that I would just work with him and his father in the family business. I didn't need to know anything more than that. I didn't ask anything more than that. I was perfectly happy. I said, do I need to finish my semester? And he said that was up to me. And I said, I'd rather not. I'd rather just go with you. I said I had a passport. I said I could leave. But then at first, I was going with him, and then all of a sudden he changed on a dime like that, and I wasn't allowed to leave. I have no idea why. And then all of a sudden Romer just started like incessantly hounding me.
How can you say no to the living God? How can you say no to the Son of God who died for you? How can you say no? How can you say no to a God who's been so good to you? How can you say no to a God who graces you with the call to serve him? It doesn't even make sense. And you see, the truth is we're all his servants. That's who God has made us. It's one thing to be called a saint and a Christian and a follower and a soldier and an ambassador and all the rest. Servant of the Most High God. Every single one of us is a servant of God. And so our spirit is, we have to serve him in humility. We have to serve him to the best of our God-given ability through the gifts that God has given us. Certainly, we should consider it indeed a high honor. Well, there's another reason for it, and that is this. To serve God is a means by which I can express my gratitude to God for saving me. Now listen carefully. We do not serve God in order to be saved. I'm going to say that 3 times because that's what people will hear. We do not serve God in order to be forgiven. We do not serve God in order to go to heaven. We do not serve God in order to be saved. We do not serve God in order to inherit eternal life. We serve God because we are saved, because we do have the gift of eternal life, because we are his children, because we are eternally secure, because we are born again, because we are saved. It's because we are that we serve him. But we certainly should be sons and daughters of gratitude, and certainly servants of gratitude, because what has he done? What he's done for us is what no one else could possibly do. You think about this. God saved some of us very early in life. Thank God he did. Some God has saved very late in life. Thank God he saved you late in life. God in his grace and mercy and love and patience and long suffering has put up with a whole bunch of junky stuff in all of our lives. What is he just kept on loving us, kept on blessing us, kept on using us? What? Listen, he's not looking for perfect people. You say, well, I'm so imperfect. Join the ranks of the imperfect. We're all imperfect. We don't come to church because we're worthy. We don't come to church because we're good. We don't come to church because, listen, because we're perfect. We don't come to church because we're saints. We come to church to worship him because we're his sons and daughters and servants of his, and we want to honor him, serve him, love him, praise him, worship him, and adore him because of who he is, not because of who we are. So much of the world's idea is self-centered. Number one, first, biggest, position, power, prestige, prominence. What's Jesus thinking all the time? Bondservant, washing feet, doing whatever is necessary to do what? To serve the living God. Now listen, when God calls us to serve him, we can't tell him where, when, how long, or anything else. Listen, if Jesus Christ walked in here today and walked up to you and said to you, I want you to serve me, how many of you would say, well, where? When? How much? How long? What's it going to cost me? Servants are God-centered. So let me...
Actually, when I didn't ask questions. Now that I'm by myself and nobody came back for me, I'm asking questions. But in the moment, I was good. I was just like, you're it. I'm your it. And you have something going on that I don't need to finish college for? Great. And then that just disappeared and evaporated. I don't know why. Now, last Sunday, this Jets football team with the NFL, they cut into my morning programming. I normally watch Cindy Shu on Channel 2 with John. I've made mention of them. They're the morning programmers. Today, they mentioned is Cindy's last day on the weekends. They had a nice token of thank you and goodbye to her. And they're replacing her with Grime. That's the woman's name. So it's going from Shu to Grime. I can't make this up in house names. It's just what's on Channel 2 now in the coming weekends. But the Jets have broken in to my whatever Manning, I heard, an MAN with an ING. He did some quarterback work, so I hear, for this team called the Giants. Giants were mentioned once in a movie called Mad A Gascar. Scar. It's like King Julian was like, "All hail the New York Giants." And the lion was Alex. I know that these are important things. I just don't know who to thank for the reference, and I don't know if it's in mockery or if it's in being serious with King Stars. It gets really confusing. By the way, we lost Gorbachev this week. He has a very serious look from my grandfather's era. And I don't see that kind of seriousness any longer amongst whatever's partying in the house on this side of the water anyway. I don't see other places.
When you're a football fan here, you have two choices: blue or green.
30 more minutes! 30 more minutes of hard work, then we'll close the chapter!
Looking, squeeze it out right side, called by Megan. Hit it the 12-yard line and hammered down. The 36, the only man.
My first and only football game I've ever been to that wasn't on some television at some Super Bowl party. Only football game that I actually sat in a stadium in the chair with a stranger, but from the local area that was kind enough to invite me, was a derby game between Jets and Giants. Also just so happened to be on a veterans, I don't believe it was actually on Veterans Memorial Day, maybe it was, but it had a veterans tribute to our veterans. And they came out on the field. I mean, it for me, although I'm very serious, no emotions, I mean, inside I was just like, oh, they do exist. And there they are in real action. So that was important for me. So thank you to whoever, I know the man's name, but whatever was on the back end of that, in working with whatever they work with, I thank you, because that was a memorious day for me. There's so few that when they do come about, it seems so ordinary in the moment, but in historical context, they do have power.
Touchdown, Jets!
2 weeks away from the season opener, the Jets have one final tune-up in store. This one, across town.
It's almost like a road game. You guys are going to pack up the buses. You're going to go over to, the crosstown team's facility. What do you guys kind of want to show tomorrow against that?
It's going to be turned, man. You got to watch it. I feel like, New York, so it's kind of going to be amped up. But nah, we expect it to be very, very competitive. But we're going to try to get after them, though.
Now, I get that they play this ridiculous sport in, like this is like, again, they invited me one day. I was like really happy my veterans were there that protect and serve, like in a greater existential system. Like I'm really excited about this sports arena, guys. Like, I'm not really feeling this at the moment. So I think you're way too overpaid. I don't know how you got so integrated. I don't know what comes on the back end of this, but I see a whole lot of changes in New York that looks like treason, sedition, and mutiny. So I'm just saying, and I'm looking at the highest paid mutineers up at the top. Like, what happened? What were you not in collective bargaining table? Like, I get Serena Williams just had her last match the other night. She has a racket. Literally, she has a racket, and it's called US Open. I don't know who opened the US. I don't know why they handed her a racket. But there are federal charges for racketeering. That much I know. That usually keeps some of the people in line. What I'm not clear on is who processes sedition, treason, and mutiny when there is so much integration with other countries and other people in states, representing states that are not statesmen. I mean, these are not the boys that grew up in New York. Maybe some of them are. I have no idea. There's no way I could even vet that. But I'll tell you who did grow up in New York. I have 4 boys. And one certainly could have been a professional sports anything. Never was trained, asked, or even given the opportunity. But yet somehow they recruited these people in these really whacked out ratios for some other insidious, nefarious purpose. While I'm being raped, abused, neglected, I'm losing blood volume mysteriously. And then I look, they've got Atlantic something on the shirt. And then I read the front of the bus and it says Provost Academy. Get a definition on provost because I know that is extremely important in criminality. Alexa, what is provost?
A provost is the senior academic administrator at many institutions of higher education in the United States and Canada, and the equivalent of a deputy vice chancellor at some institutions in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia. Additionally, the heads of certain colleges of universities in the UK and Ireland are called provosts. The term is, used in this sense, the equivalent of a master or principal at other colleges.
So the football team that no longer looks North American, no longer looks or represents New York State, or is now representative of New York State at the height of the treason season. I mean, like, again, where does the protection of the children that were here? I mean, like, I know you really care who's going to sell your vitamins and your jerseys and your season tickets and, like, your college educations and keeping this economy going. Like, I get there's a level of that. But then there's, like, a whole lot in between when there's, like, the Democrats and the Republicans and the Federalists. Like, there's an I love you somewhere and there's an I owe you. Pointed at this one, since my life is so awry and it didn't start off that way. But I'm looking to see what got put on such a high shelf. It almost seems untouchable from where I'm stuck at the bottom of someone's grimy shoe. And I get the police, they're big fans. I have seen that interaction. It doesn't help with the enforcement of, I mean, like, these buddy relationship as the season turns and as the fall and change of colors in New York happen. It's really frightening. as to where do you go for loyalists.
This is not your normal rivalry. These two teams share a stadium.
They live in New York too, so we want to show that we the better team.
It has a football, it has some Provost Academy claim anyway, and it's got an airline. So now it's human trafficking as well. It sounds like a racket, or maybe a club. I mean, like, again, it's not holding a golf club or a club, but I think there are clubs associated somehow, somewhere in the depths of whatever. I really think the NBA is the absolute worst. I'll be honest with you, based on their presentation and their proclamation of some King James that is not King James, not by King Star standards, and not by the ancestors of this land, not by green linen, not by past presidency. They are the actors of treason and sedition in the worst offenses that I can ascertain from what they're presenting in some postulate format.
3 weeks into camp, a change of scenery is in order. There's nothing wrong with a little friendly competition, even if it's with your crosstown rival.
No. It says right there, Provost Academy. Like, is this like somebody's college project in like some King's College or Queen's College elsewhere that's now gone on for way too long? And it, like, you are outside the realm of experimentation, especially when it starts harming the health, the safety, and the welfare of what used to live here. And I don't know how they disappeared. I don't know where the criminality, like, where do you investigate the criminality of, like, what happened to the entire population? Where did they go?
Get him now. Anybody in front of you. Annihilate him. So you do. Come on, Z. I need you today. Turn me up. Let's get it. All day, bro. Air up.
For Elijah Moore and the Jets, winning the day would be nice, but there's still time to work out the kinks.
And again, I don't want to watch other people work out. It's like watching paint dry. It's like the worst possible, like, I want to be able to move and work myself out with others. I don't want to have to stand here and watch others working out. It seems ridiculous. Now, here's what I found. It's called Haiti Premier Class. Same day as the Jets and all this other stuff that I caught wind of. Except, I mean, parlez-vous français? Un peu. So I listen for it better than I speak it. It's like a one-way system. And translation, I'm better if I see the written word than the spoken word, although sometimes I catch every third word. And then it goes to La Liga Premier Extra in habla español, which I don't, and I have not studied. However, it's awfully similar to Italiano, and then there's the dialect, distinct vocabulary differences. But again, I don't do sophisticated anything. I'm truncated verbs for proverb and trying to figure out destination and origin of what are they up to.
Ok.
$3 million au moins.
Vous pensez qu'il faudrait que vous...
Of course. Comme yo là, c'est parce que nous pas mettre pression sur monsieur qui est sénateur. Qu'on y a ce State Department qui a dicté ba yo.
Ok.
State Department qu'on y a yo fait faillite, Nations Unies fait faillite, mais qu'on y a là nous capable mettre pression sur la chambre, sur sénateur yo, ensemble avec congressman yo pour dire White House la Maison Blanche là, mais ça diaspora.
Ok. Ça veut dire que je comprends bien rapidement, je vais résumer et ça veut nous demander un changement de leadership.
Now, behind this man, it says reparations, $21 million in US currency, based on what the symbols say. Et je ne sais pas. Inside les États-Unis, there's no italiano es scuola. I don't know the word for school in French. In italiano es scuola. But they don't teach the history of Haiti here. But there are people here that know about Haitian history. And it's this really dangerous combination because this is New York. And there are people here from Haiti in New York. I don't know what their purpose is. I don't know what their allowance is. I don't know why they're here asking for reparations. Why are they not asking for reparations from inside Haiti? How is this movement? I mean, is this the Emirates? Yeah, that sounds like the other premier in Hablo Español seems to be Emirates driven. In les États-Unis, je ne sais pas. I don't know. I don't know if that was, I mean, that seems, oh, well, they have the French and Indian War. So is that where it's coming from? Just curious. Because they, well, on Indian, I don't know. Normally, Haitians don't look very Indian at all. Although, as of late, I've seen some walking my streets that don't look Caribbean, but yet some other foreign, like the country of India, but with a very dark color, but with very almost white nose features. It's I don't know how, and I don't want to speak on this transmigration and what is behind and pushing this into the area. And how does one keep oneself safe on the interior when the exterior knows what their motives are and they're here and now they're broadcasting and now they're gaining momentum and movement and they're growing deeper than grassroots here. And they're pushing out what's been here for century, more than one century.
Plus un paquet pour stabiliser le pays dans les prochaines années pour ne pas tourner dans la même base encore.
Exactement.
Et c'est diaspora pour faire ça avec votre lit, c'est mobilisation. Qui prochaine activité qu'on va faire pour get passion together pour commencer le mouvement?
Well, first of all, nous avons un groupe qui a travaillé avec lui et qui a commencé à travailler son PAC.
Ok.
En politique.
Hey, and this, see, here, de couleur, rojas, rosa, red, rouge, rot, LA, azul, bleu, blue. At one place it's CYAN, Kyan, but I don't know the language on it. It says Haiti saved the U.S. Revolution in Savannah, Georgia in 1779 as a reference. It says here restitutions. I mean, what part of the government handles this while I'm being held in this mannerism, or away from the person for whom I was to marry originally? before the 1976 thing in the year 1999 happened.
Action group
Ok.
pour que capable mettre toute voix haïtienne ensemble politiquement.
Mhm.
Deuxièmement tout, nous avons besoin et travailler sur un fonds d'investissement.
Ok.
Nous avons besoin de mettre en vogue et puis qu'on y a là pour voir que nous gagnons quelque chose de la
Oui, mais
diaspora.
nous ne pouvons pas faire ça en novembre, non? Là,
Non, nous ne pouvons pas faire ça, mais commencer déjà avec quelques autres acteurs qui sont ensemble avec nous. Je pense que ça nous avons besoin de faire avant novembre, c'est mobiliser tout le monde pendant nous avons plan ça,
Mhm.
mobiliser tout le monde, toutes les
Now, como se dice in des chercheurs? Je ne sais pas. Ne parlez avec moi. Ne parlez avec moi. What do I do? Who do I go to? I'm in English. And I can see en français and Creole, or some form of Haitian integration with, I don't know if it's with Afrikaans. Je ne sais pas. It sounds a little, perhaps. I mean, I absolutely adore the accent, but again, if I don't know what Quebec would say on such things.
toute l'église surtout, les étudiants, tout business.
And if I look, the flags, it's India, it's Italia. Perhaps it's Italia. I can't even see the whole flag. Je ne sais pas. And then it looks like the beginnings of Israel, perhaps, or Greece. Je ne sais pas. I cannot see the whole thing. I mean, this is just so confusing.
Businessmen qui sont en longtemps, nous mobilisons avant l'élection novembre, depuis tout haïtien groupé dans Floride, dans New Jersey, dans New York. Ok, tout côté
Non,
qui
ça
est
va pour
masse
nous, on va
haïtienne.
faire non seul, c'est d'abord faire divers côtés dans la France.
Oui, il faut le
Ok.
faire s'il met à divers côtés, pour
Ok.
tout le monde rassembler, et puis qu'on y a là, là, yo.
But now here, like they are businessmen from elsewhere. All right. But I don't even have business here. I don't even have businessmen here. Lewis has had intermediate with when the powers that be are kind to him and fund him, and then when they retract funding in a business that, like, I don't know, you call it angel investors. Je ne sais pas, non so. I mean, I don't know how things get funded, how things get picked up, how things between hedge funds and venture capitalists and the gods that be nice at when and how they block one another, and then what's on the back end of that. And then is that what, like, he is not to be indebted. There was supposed to be a finality between me going with someone who came for me and was supposed to come back for me, but there was no time frame given. And in Kingstar terms, the spirit from beyond was ready to be brought forth, but the parenthetical or the sibling or the husbandry was not. I mean, it was consummated before 1999, but then fidelity came back. Non so. And then it goes from French to Spanish within the remote control. It's 2 buttons. It's up and down. So they, in order to get this NFL and sports package with football and soccer and Emirates and like whatever else they wear on their US Open merchandise and whatever this is, before that there was only 2. The channels were number 2, number 4, number 5, number 7, number 9, which was not highly used for whatever. It wasn't like a prime station. It was something else. Then there was 11, and then there was 12. And 12 was public broadcast, PBS, which usually had Nova and the Koch brothers, the KOCH, not the Coca-Cola Wars. So there was that. In my before digital and satellite and carriers and cell phones and mobile phones and being able to move away from one's house. This morning I also heard somebody in their color say that they were a steward to communications. I'm like, that is just an admission of treason. Because how could you be here employed by AT&T as the communications steward, and I have no job, I have no husband that was supposed to be. Instead, I got some guy that looks like Brad Pitt from the Bullet Train movie that's been causing me a real problem for the last 11 years that I never wanted, and the Knights of Columbus know about it, along with the Catholics. I mean, again, big problems in New York, and it's systemic. And it looks a lot like some really dangerous activities that are going unaddressed in some real serious ways, in serious mechanics. Here's the Spanish portion. La Liga Premier Extra. They both, by the way, Haiti Premier and La Liga Premier.
Los dirigentes todavía no han aportado y él dice, sabemos que tenemos que enfrentarnos a una campaña modesta, el tema es que lo sepa el público y que haya paciencia sobre Rogers, porque si no consigue un buen resultado en el día de hoy, me pregunto qué es lo que sucederá en la semana.
¿Qué querés? Te lo pregunto yo a ti.
Bueno, ya hay un entrenador que ha perdido su puesto.
4 fechas.
Y sí,
pero 9-0.
la situación es incómoda.
Pero 9-0. Ahora traes a
pero una
Buffalo,
sola victoria,
que es central.
Sí.
Y no lo puedes inscribir por un tema burocrático, porque no
exacto.
tiene la visa, entonces algo
tiene
está
el
fallando.
permiso de trabajo. Ese es el tema del Brexit.
Sí, pero está bien, pero si tú eres director deportivo tienes que... O sea, no vas a traer un
Lo que no puede
refuerzo.
ser es que la burocracia sea tan lenta en estos casos. Necesitas un refuerzo. Estando colista lo necesitas ya, lo necesitas ahora.
Se quejó Lampard en el partido entre semana que había inscrito un jugador que no lo pudo hacer jugar.
Y aparece Cruz Azul, que traes un jugador para la mitad del campeonato. Ese es otro fútbol.
Bueno, el Leicester necesita resultados y los necesita ya porque el tiempo se le acaba. Veremos qué ocurre con el conjunto de...
For me, this is soccer. This is soccer, not football. Parlare espagnol e parlare français. Perhaps football, but it's American football looks different. That's the NFL. This is something called the MLS, which then gets really confusing considering I was part of something called an MLS and NAR, but part of a GRI, which should know better.
Brendan Rodgers, si no consigue la victoria en el día de hoy, su futuro se antoja bastante complicado. Vamos a tener una breve pausa, los jugadores ya calentando sobre la cancha y enseguida volvemos con mucho más.
Perdón, pero se acabó.
Pues ambos vimos esto venir.
Bienvenidos a Allstate, donde estamos bajando el precio de nuestros seguros. Conductores que se cambiaron ahorraron más de $700.
Again, it looks very Bengali. It does, I mean, they're saying it's Hispanic or Spanish, but it looks Bengali. I'm really confused. I'll go back actually for the premiere for French. They have their commercials as well on the Haitian station in French. Just so I complete this circuit properly.
Leo, the Democratic.
Cleaning, Promédant, Route Canal. 456 Schenectady Avenue, dans Brooklyn, New York. 718 953 76 39.
Mega Restaurant and Catering offre un bol chaque dimanche de midi à 4h.
Connu pour son cadre romantique, c'est délicieux préparé par des chefs expérimentés, Miguel Restaurant offre un service de catering pour toute occasion. Baptême, mariage, communion, graduation, repas et corporate meeting. Miguel Restaurant, 170 Post Avenue Westbury, 516 338 49 33. Je sais, nous connaissons, je dis à la nouvelle que comme on a fait une manifestation devant l'ONU, c'est exactement ça que tu as dit comme message.
No, that's on my New York television. Like, I don't even really have to go far. I go really close to wherever I was watching, and I caught wind of Dr. Charles, who's in touch. And then all of a sudden, and he seems interior North American correct for the way that he speaks. But then I go into languages that I wasn't taught in New York State elementary school, for where I was being held captivated for the first few years, with the promise of the correct person and family member to bring me to marriage. It was English. It was as English as I speak at the moment, without any of the fanciful add-ons. It was just basic. It was almost like a farmhouse. I mean, they call it Ivy, but whatever. It was non-political. It was non-geographical. Whatever. And then now, same area, there's broadcasts in all sorts of languages that I can't even translate. How is that to the betterment of myself and my children when I can't even teach them these languages, but yet they're here in some businessman and some steward fashion? At what point do the bells go off in keeping one's self and their children safe and in some form of prosperity? Because at this point, it looks like dereliction. I have nothing other than my parents to rely on. Thank God I have them, which I do every day. Not that it's the optimal, but I am grateful for at least having a 120 square foot room with a bed. And then whatever, until this situation rectifies itself, however the rectory is working on that. If they are working on it, I would have no idea. Now, the episode for Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley was E35. This talks about somebody who's working for AT&T. Again, these companies, these jobs were not, when the person who I was supposed to go with and work with him in his father whatever and family business, and then never came back for me, and then Benjamin showed up. Where's the backup plan? How am I supposed to survive this long in North America with all of this treason going on, or all of this, whatever this is? I don't even have another word for it. I really don't know. It's not something that they prepare you for.
Those efforts are underway. Already, 58% of American workers say they have the option to work from home for at least part of the week.
Here, you want the purple one?
AT&T Network Center technician Val Wilson isn't among them. In April, after she'd been working at home for 2 years, AT&T ordered her department back to the office 5 days a week.
My heart sunk. It's almost a slap in the face.
You know, it's a slap in the face. Not being offered the same position. Not being able to afford or be able to have a salaried position with some corporate to serve. Like, I had Chase for a very short time before the second or the fourth baby came. But it wasn't enough salary to survive. And I had to pay to have somebody watch him. I mean, like, again, I had to pay for somebody to watch the other three. I had to be home for them. So the money mechanics didn't work. There was no option at the bank of working from home, or at least it wasn't presented to me. I tried to find a mentor inside the bank to ask them about lines of business, how I could get a better paying position where they thought I would be good at. I had a dinner with someone who I found through the inside network of Chase as a mentor. And nothing ever came to fruition of that. It was a one-time meeting and then that was it.
Due to the reason we've been doing the job, it's been proven for those 2 years. You've patted us on the back for our productivity.
To make matters worse, Wilson says that AT&T consolidated 3 departments onto a single crowded floor of a new building.
We're all on edge, so to say. And then all it takes is for one person to cough or sneeze, and that anxiety kicks in again because you're like, where did it come from? So your office morale right now is none.
Do you think they'll lose some good talent with that approach?
We've already lost good talent. When we were forced back in, we've already lost some.
Are they in any danger of losing you if this situation doesn't get better?
I'm sorry, I get emotional when that comes up because I feel like I've done so much and put in so much to get to 30 years of service. And to make that decision to leave early, it's painful.
As a union steward, Wilson has proposed a hybrid plan to her bosses. She's hoping
A union steward, I don't even know what that construct looks like. I don't have education on it, never been offered it. I don't have 30 years that I was even offered to put in for service to something that offered a salary or a plan or some kind of supplemental compensation for time traded for monetary amount where I could survive in New York at the same time this is going on. Where are the politicians that were responsible for making sure that the ancestors in this land had some form of care plan? Because it is so obvious that there was some small attempts made, but there really was no follow through, and there was no real drive to see it succeed to completion. That is crystal clear. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.